Good afternoon, Neil here with the Arthur Radio Show and with the 831 tonight, TC.
831 in the house.
Very special guest, as you said, well said, the protector of the California coastline.
I think that's a pretty good description.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just did a little research on Mark Massara today. Welcome back to the show. And the history you have with the projects you've been involved with, the success in some of your lawsuits that you've been involved with, are off the charts. There's one that I want to start out with. Trestles. I mean, it's the queen of our coast. And you can describe a little about this, but this one caught me off guard because Trestles is so important. They wanted to build a highway through there.
Yeah, in the late 1990s and through the early 2000s, the Orange County Transportation Corridor had the plans to build a giant toll road right through the middle of San Onofre State Park. It would have destroyed the beach to link up with I-5 and build tens of thousands of new homes adjacent to Camp Pendleton and up that corridor. And we literally worked for over 10 years with Surfrider Foundation and Sierra Club and the California Parks Foundation and all of the Native American tribes and representatives. The Cal Trout and all of the creek there had steelhead fishery and all of the hundreds of thousands of people who'd had the opportunity to camp there over the years, and of course the millions of surfers who love that part of the coastline and managed to win. We not only won at the Coastal Commission, but then we won in front of the federal government and the Department of Commerce hearings as well on appeal. And that was a really amazing victory.
It just amazes me when you think about the scope of that success and how many people Trestles is their life.
Well, they're going to hold aren't they holding the Olympics there?
I believe they are holding the Olympics there.
Yeah.
And you know, every year the largest, I would say the best contest in Southern California is held at Trestles. And I've surfed Trestles many times, and it's like Rincon. It'd be like doing that to Rincon, which they kind of did.
It's a mecca for surfing in Southern California. You know, essentially right on that San Diego Orange County county line, and it's something special. It's insane that anybody ever thought it would be a good idea to build a nuclear power plant on the beach there.
Yeah.
But that's part of our legacy and culture and historical record now as well.
Yeah.
We gotta live with that.
Yeah.
And when they built that nuke, they thought that it would be temporary. That at the time they were planning to transport all the radioactive waste to Nevada and put it in caves, right? These early engineers, you know, they were dinosaurs. But they never thought about how they would transport it, right? And then 40 years later, they're thinking, holy Christ, we can't put it on the railroad. We can't put it on highways. What are we going to do with this stuff?
Yeah.
And as a result, both San Onofre and Diablo Canyon, the other nuclear power plant on the beach in California, both store radioactive waste on site. So when you start talking about sea rise and adaptability and resilience and future planning and stuff, I'm not so much concerned about these single-family homes along the coast as I am about airports, railroads, freeways, and nuclear power plants.
And both of those are on faults, I believe, as well.
That's right.
Yeah, I mean,
right.
And so great to know that there's a bunch of waste stored on top of a fault.
I think we should let him tell us what he wants to talk about tonight. What do you think, TC?
Well, I just the Trestles one that one's special in my heart. And there's a few other things that you've done. I mean,
Privates was a big thing.
Martin's
Right?
Beach.
Oh,
I mean,
Martin.
that's something that's a little more in the now, and I think we're still dealing with that.
It's true that the property owner has ongoing litigation with the state of California and a host of California state agencies regarding land use out there. But what we did on behalf of Surfrider Foundation was win permanent injunctions so that anybody, whether surfers, beach visitors, can park on Highway 1 and walk down to Martin's Beach for free at any time. And frankly, I hope that those permanent injunctions never go away, despite what may or may not happen there in the future with respect to any sort of development or the litigation that the property owner still has going, because those achievements are awesome. And if you've never taken the time to walk down to Martin's Beach, I highly recommend it. The place is so incredibly drop dead gorgeous.
Yeah.
The bluffs.
It's just, whether they're surf or not,
Yeah.
it's such a beautiful spot. And everybody's inevitably really pleased when they're down there, and people are super cordial and happy to talk.
Is it right now? Is it open to the public right now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, you can't. The gate's still
Closed.
locked.
Occasionally the gate is open, and what they'll do is they want to allow drive-ins occasionally and then charge to park, which is another sort of issue that they're litigating, because I think they're charging $10 a car now, and back in the old days they charged $2, so they're fighting over that. But the reality is the walk down the hill, it only takes a few minutes, and it's so gorgeous that I encourage everybody to just walk for free.
It's a beautiful spot. Two important ones we mentioned. You have countless historical decisions based that protect surfing and beach access in California. Is there another one that, before we move on to the future, that looking back kind of tugs at your heart?
Oh gosh, I've had the luck and the privilege to be able to be involved in almost every giant coastal related controversy in California over the last 30 years. And it just starts from being a little kid in Santa Barbara for the oil spills in the late 1960s, right through law school, and then when we founded Surfrider Foundation, the pulp mills litigation up in Humboldt County was at that time the largest water pollution case ever prosecuted in the United States, and by some miracle we won, and then proceeded to just work on everything else, Bayona and Bolsa Chica and sewer plants and LNG terminals, and then innumerable projects here in Santa Cruz over all of those years that I was at O'Neill. So I spent years at Surfrider Foundation, then 18 years at Sierra Club directing their programs, coastal programs, and then 10 years at O'Neill, where I was able to work with Jack and Pat and the company, and then so many issues in Santa Cruz.
Yeah. You have some great memories of Jack?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I mean, he was the boss right up until the day he passed.
Yeah.
And then that memorial that
Was
we
incredible.
did,
Yeah.
you can see it on YouTube.
Yeah.
I mean,
We were-
there were like 8,000 people in the
We were on
water.
TC's boat. Me and TC were on the boat. Jack's paddle out.
Oh,
That
was amazing.
That was a highlight of my whole career, and working at O'Neill,
Yeah.
and with Jack was just a highlight of it. Would be a highlight in any lawyer's career.
the legend.
Oh my God!
Yeah.
I mean, there's never going to be another. And Pat, like you couldn't imagine a better person to follow through with that company. They're just legends.
We think Jack is reincarnated as a shark.
Yeah, we do.
Because at the paddle out, we saw a big shark breach.
I heard
A half
about that.
hour
I was
before
on,
the paddle out.
I was on the stand-up, and people were talking about the shark.
Yeah, it was it jumped 5 feet.
We
out
were
of the
hugging
water.
each other in his cabin.
we were in the boat. We're like, we're not getting in the water.
I have a great Jack story. When we were fighting over the Pleasure Point seawall, and I've morphed 180 degrees on armoring over the years, but early on, it was probably 2006 or something, I got the Coastal Commission to deny the Pleasure Point seawall. They said, let the road wash away. And Jack O'Neill, who lived right there, the guy that had the most to lose, also opposed the seawall.
He did?
And I told, and this was before I even went to work for O'Neill. I was still at Sierra Club, and I said, Jack, how could you oppose that seawall when your house could wash away? He said, oh no, my house not washing away. I'm going to build a little bridge.
Well, and what's interesting about that is Jack eventually was able to build a seawall.
Well, part of the concession. So what happened was, after the Coastal Commission denied the Pleasure Point seawall, and at that time it was going to be entirely funded by the Army Corps of Engineers, the county went back to the drawing board, and they're all like, we have got to have this seawall, or all our infrastructure is going to wash away, and we need that damn road. And so they worked with Coastal Commission. Gary Griggs did a really great analysis where he was able to show that based on the reefs, the location of the reefs being offshore and sea rise and stuff, that it probably wouldn't have a dramatic adverse impact on the surf, which is of course debatable. I see kids surfing backwards on high tide. Days.
Wait for tide above.
I made a wave go that way.
That's my
So the county came back 2009. They got permission. They ultimately built the wall. And at that time, Coastal Commission staff was saying to Jack, look, we understand that you're in a vulnerable position being on the down coast side of that wall, so we'll let you build a seawall. So then we designed, and by that time I was already working with the family, we designed a super bulletproof wall that, truth be told, Jack spent more on that wall than his house was worth. It's just a little iconic house, right? Nowadays, the most iconic surf house in all of surfing, in the entire world.
Did you guys purposely incorporate the blowhole?
Well, so that came after the fact. So we got Jack's project approved, but he was such, a tinkerer and an inventor that he decided that because he's watching the county seawall and the reverberation there, and he's saying, I am not going to damage that surf spot in front of my house. And the way that I'm going to mitigate the wall is I'm going to build this blowholes into it. And he redesigned it on his own with the engineers and built in those blowholes. And we really didn't know whether they would work. But all you had to do after it was constructed is watch the energy going up those blowholes to realize he was right. And that feature has dramatically mitigated any impacts to the surfing in front of the wall. It's really quite remarkable. And I argued to coastal staff that they should require all seawalls have those things. But they've never quite resigned themselves to that being appropriate.
Did they not do it on the west side?
Well, there's natural ones on the west side.
Yeah.
So Gary Griggs, the professor at UCSC, he's also done a lot of research on those over the years, and they go back over 100 years.
Yeah.
I always kind of thought that it should be soft, because like you said,
It's passive.
When we're surfing backwards, it's because it's hitting a flat surface and backwashing. But I am happy they built the wall.
It's just we better tackle those notes down there.
You did bring notes. I'm very
We
impressed.
better tackle them.
I thought part of the metamorphosis that I've gone through, especially with respect to armoring, is that when I was younger, when I spent decades at Surfrider and Sierra Club, and I really literally fought like every single seawall, no matter what the size, because I felt that seawalls have adverse impacts. They drown the beach, they scour the sand, and with sea rise, those impacts are only going to be exacerbated in the future. And it really wasn't until I got my ass beat on the Pleasure Point wall and watched it from Jack's house being built, and watched the way that it had such a dramatic impact on the culture and the neighborhood and the vibe and the surfing and every single other part of this community, that I began to think, wow, maybe I'm looking at this too narrowly. And I get it that there are probably old timers who hate what's happened to this community, especially the increase in the cost of housing is one impact that is totally measurable, but is something that is, of course, occurring across the entire coastal zone.
But we think about it. We think about it as money nowadays. You talk about that thing. We talked about that thing earlier with Nick, and how stated ways think they put a value on.
Well, that's
on
going.
surfing
That's to me is going too far, right? So what I have tried to do is, and we're doing it. We built the seawall at the top of. We built Jack's Wall, has goat trails, and like Pat likes to say, Jack, you didn't build a seawall, you built an amphitheater. If you've ever been out there on a low tide sunny day, I mean, there's people like lounging all over that thing, drying their wetsuits and stuff. And then we were all like, wow, these things have utility. Like, they can be public benefits. And so then we built the wall at the top of Pleasure Point and convinced, the Coastal Commission and the federal agencies and everybody else that you could build a walkway, and stairs down to the top of Pleasure Point into these armoring projects that not only protect the property, but also obligate the property owner to provide in perpetuity free access to the public 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, forever. Yeah. And I'm just all like, the county can't do that. Coastal Commission doesn't contribute to any of these projects. State parks are falling apart and they can't even maintain their stairs. If we don't get the property owners and the Coastal Commission on the same page, and the county and the Coastal Commission on the same page, in the future, sea rise is going to happen, but everything is just going to fall apart. And why shouldn't we provide these benefits at no cost to the public? And I've only gotten more committed to this as we've done project after project. We have a 3-house project over on Pleasure Point, adjacent to those old stairs that go down the middle there. And eventually the goal is to link up everything from Pleasure Point Park all the way to Rockview to be able to, instead of having to walk down the middle of the street with no views of the coast, children, disabled people, elderly people should all be able to walk along the coast at no cost to the taxpayers. Right. And I'd like to see that happen from 41st Avenue all the way to Capitola. Not every coastal community is in a position to be able to do something like this, but the combination of the high real estate values along this part of the coast with the strangulation of sand emanating from the original construction of the harbor. I mean, these folks got screwed. It wasn't their fault.
It should be a beach.
What's that?
It should be a beach.
Well, there was a beach.
Rockview was a huge
We've done
beach.
so much research. Rockview is one of the most erosion-prone beaches in the entire state of California. I mean, we've got analysis at Rockview that show that, if you don't have armoring there, the erosion will be like 40 feet a year. It is really rough right in there.
Well, it's amazing if you look at the rocks at Windansea and Rockview, how much they've shrunk since the 80s. And those used to kind of protect it. Now it just sweeps through.
Oh, I should put in a plug. Along the way, around 2004, we built this website called CaliforniaCoastline.org. And this was Ken and Gabrielle Edelman, who just lived down the way in Corlitos. And they combined their love of photography and helicopters in flying up and down the coast. And just to date myself here, in the late 90s, when we were working on the Hearst Ranch resorts in San Simeon, we had to literally take digital pictures of the landscape, and I went around to all the Patagonia stores and surf shops. I did these little impromptu slideshows to raise awareness about all of the resorts and golf and housing and everything that the Hearst Corporation had proposed on that 18 miles of coast in San Simeon. And it dawned on us that we needed pictures of the entire coast, right? So come digital film, in 2002, we posted the first string of photos of the entire California coastline that Ken and Gabrielle shot from their helicopter. Wow. And then they've done this every several years since, and including 2024, just last year. And then working with Gary Griggs and the Department of Boating and Waterways in Sacramento, we got all the old California slides of the coast that they had been taking since the 1950s and before the Coastal Act. And we digitalized all of those photographs. So now you can literally go on this California Coastal Records project. It's CaliforniaCoastline.org. Type in your favorite beach, no matter where it is, or your own property if you own coastfront property, and press the time comparison button and look at what's happened over the last 50 years. It's amazing. I mean, you just see incredible monumental changes and huge beaches that are now, reduced to rubble.
Look at Seabright Beach, right? Look how
the changes.
Huh?
There was a parking lot at Rockview.
If you go back 100 years at Pleasure Point, they had 150 feet of beach out there in the 1930s.
I remember when they did the war, I wrote an article about this from the Sentinel. I was working for the paper. And I talked to this old guy he was a 36, one house down from 36. He goes, Sonny, across the street here, it used to be called Breakers Beach. We'd have jazz bands out there, we'd be dancing and partying, and have it be a lawn. It was fantastic. And then all of a sudden, it's just all gone. But it was called Breakers Beach. Now I'll never forget that.
Are we accelerating faster right now? Is our acceleration and erosion faster?
It's tough to know. I mean, anybody that's familiar with these beaches on the east side, they will lose or gain 10 feet of sand overnight, depending on swells and tide conditions. There are beaches in Santa Cruz that are much larger today than they were 100 years ago. That area south of the up coast of the harbor is just giant.
Huge.
I mean,
right.
and down here on 20th right now is huge, but that's where houses have been lost in the past. And then there were those like seminal El Nino events in the early 80s,
when the house at 26 fell in.
Yeah, but those events have rarely, if ever, revisited, right? So I'm of the opinion at this point that sea rise is happening. I think it's happening much less dramatically than we're being required to analyze. So every single project you do along the coast, you got to have this whole boatload of engineers and geotechnical folks doing all these reports, speculating on what might happen if there's 6 feet of sea rise and a high tide and a tsunami and a big storm. And of course, the whole downtown is going to be flooded. But I think what people don't realize is that's always been true in California. You could go back hundreds of years. People would fires, floods, tsunamis, big wave events. Those pioneers, they rebuilt shit. What we don't do today is it takes like 7 years to get a permit for a house. It's 5-6 years to get a permit for just repairing an existing seawall. And the difference between 100 years ago and today is if your pier fell over 100 years ago, you had guys out there rebuilding it.
Next day, right?
Yeah, other countries like Mexico, they're out there rebuilding the minute the hurricane is over. We don't do that. Like if you look at any of these catastrophic fires that we're having up and down the coast and throughout California, it takes those permits to rebuild. If your house burns down in a fire, they're exempt from permitting, right? It takes years and years and years to get approvals to rebuild your dang house.
Now they can't get insurance either.
Look at these fires in Santa Cruz. They're only like 40% of the homes lost have ever been rebuilt.
Yeah.
That's part of it is sad that we're not able to build and be. We talk about resilience, and for a lot of my environmental colleagues, that means retreat. Let's get ahead of sea rise. Let's leave. And I tell the Coastal Commission, that sounds to me like you're waving a white flag and giving up. Why doesn't resilience mean let's rebuild faster? And that to me that's the history and the story and the culture of the coast. Right. Except that now we're all about regulations.
I got 2.5 years trying to replace my kitchen cabinets. I haven't got my permit yet.
The gentleman right here is Lee Solomon. He's a very well-known meteorologist here in town. And
Lee is the best weatherman on the planet.
He's great.
He is. Sorry, he's looking at my phone right now.
I can't tell. You got a lot of them there.
You have a question, Lee?
There's a bunch of them.
I had a couple of questions.
Come on over here,
You kind of hit a bunch of them. I was on my way over, and you.
Lee, I think I've been watching your YouTubes for years.
Yes, he's a YouTuber. Yeah,
I'm Lee.
Lee.
Yeah.
Everybody, Lee Solomon. Welcome back.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
Got done with the plumbing.
Good job.
Yeah. That's why I was late. You mentioned Martin's Beach a little while ago, and so that's like a fishing beach to me, more obviously than a surfing beach. But Have you come across a lot of issues over the years where fishermen might be opposed to or aligned to surfers? We deal with that a lot on the East Coast.
Certainly around the
you know?
piers, man.
Right,
People
right.
fight on the piers. But I haven't seen, like at Martin's is really interesting. You know, there's not as much fish there as they used to have. These
Sure,
huge
absolutely.
runs there.
Shad?
If you
The
look,
smelt.
Oh, smell. Yeah.
and so I don't see conflicts there. But every other pier, I mean, I've run into it myself. Pacifica and Huntington, any pier where you've got people fishing and other people trying to
What's sort of
surf
the law on
underneath.
that?
Well, you can't deliberately try to hurt somebody.
Sure.
And both surfing, I mean, legally, it's interesting. Both surfing and fishing are prioritized under the law. Those are priority uses. So you just got to be careful you're not assaulting somebody by threatening them or trying to cast right at them or something. If inadvertently you get tangled up, and that's happened to me just coming in when people are fishing for the beach, you know, you'll get tangled in people's lines.
Because they're dealing with that on the East Coast quite a bit. They're trying to save the striped bass, right? And then you've had a lot
Sure,
of
they were along the shore.
yeah. There's a lot of homeowners, we'll say wealthy, folks with big homes that are sort of blocking the access to people to get to the beach. And there are some laws that go back to like the 1700s from Civil War time where people actually had the rights to fish those beaches, and they've had to align sort of these commercial fishermen and recreational guys and even surfers, because the only way to protect the access was to go back and say these beaches need to have access for these commercial guys, and hence everybody else needs access too.
So the oldest, some of the oldest known law related to coastal access are these Justinian Roman codes, and they were designed to ensure continued access, not for commerce, but for recreation and enjoyment of coastal resources. And we've got it incorporated right into the California Constitution. And so, but again, surfers, beachcombers, picnickers, fishermen are all going to have the same status. So, everybody has a legal right to that tidal area, whether it's a river or a coast. But I don't know that you can set up shop and prohibit other people. That's never going to work. Coastal's not going to give you permits for one thing. State Lands Commission, you may be able to get a tides lease for things like docks. That's pretty common. We have to get them if any of the armoring projects extend into state waters.
Do you run into that issue where if it's surfing or fishing on the beach with the high tide line and people accessing areas in front of private property where the homeowners try to own that portion of the beach?
No, I tell all my clients, don't ever harass anybody from the public, man. Now, maybe you've seen some of the videos that come out in Laguna Beach and stuff where these fools want to put a line in the sand.
That's what I'm asking. Yeah, with that high tide line sort of thing.
People are smart enough now to take video, and then they put you on TV, and
You're Karen when that happens.
you're miserable. Man. You don't want to do that. All it does is bring unwanted attention. Who cares if somebody's sitting or walking across your property for a few hours? That's not a big deal. Nothing people should worry about.
And Leah, you as a fisherman and a surfer, have you been hassled more as a fisherman with access or surfing? Because you obviously travel beaches.
I would say fishing.
Yes.
More on the fishing side, and that's more again back east.
Mm-hmm. And it's access. People don't want you fishing.
It's access. Mm-hmm. It's access down trails through woods.
People have an overblown sense of their private property rights and this whole notion of the right to exclude. I try to tell people that along the coast, it's different than if you're in the mountains or somewhere where you can chase people off of your property.
Well, got that thing in Aptos. Remember the sea cliff there? They have the houses on the beach.
They built the fence.
Yeah, they built
Yeah,
a fence.
they did.
Rio Del Mar.
Yeah.
Del
So
Mar.
that's on my list.
Yeah, yeah.
That is, for my, coastfront property owners, that's a lesson of misery, that if you're not careful in the way you handle these scenarios, you can end up broke and beaten. I mean, what happened at Rio Del Mar and that little walkway and those 30 some odd homes is a tragedy in my mind for the property owners, because they got such bad advice from their representatives. I mean, they chose to fight the Coastal Commission. Coastal Commission imposed a $5 million fine on them. And then litigate, where they won in the trial court, and now, like as of 2 weeks ago, have lost at the Court of Appeals, which is what always happens. The California Court of Appeals always interprets the Coastal Act and the Coastal Commission's jurisdiction in the broadest possible manner to facilitate public rights. And sure enough, they found that the public had rights on that sidewalk.
Yeah.
And it seems to me, and so the owners, not only are paying 10% interest on the $5 million fine that they never paid in the first instance, but they've spent millions and millions more on lawyers fighting now for the last 10 years, only to have now lost everything. And it seems to me that it would have been so easy to provide a compromise whereby, just like in Pacific Beach in San Diego and just like in Mission Beach,
Right.
where you have Laguna and
Venice.
Newport, where you have these big oceanfront sidewalks, and houses immediately adjacent, provide a little front yard area for those houses, whether it's 4 feet or 6 feet or something, where you can have a patio chair and a barbecue, and then a public space where the public can utilize that stuff. And what I try to explain to my clients and for public policy is that then allows those homeowners to engage the Coastal Commission and their local governments when they need protection against sea rise and waves, and if you need rocks or seawalls or whatever. You're not just protecting your own stuff, you're also protecting the public property. And it makes no sense to me that these guys fight tooth and nail for every inch of the thing, as if anyone's going to help them armor that in the future, right? There's no public benefit to allowing them to do that. And then they end up losing everything anyway.
Well, and in the eyes of the community, they're douchebags.
Yeah.
So I walk that beach all the time, and I look up there, and I'm like, douchebags.
All you do is go on Google, and there's 50 news stories about how horrible they are.
Yeah.
I got another question to ask you. I know this is a little bit of off to the side, but what's the law on being on the beach? A lot of spots say you have to be off the beach by 10 o'clock. I don't understand that.
So you're supposed to have.
Good question.
You're supposed to have a.
I fish at
permit.
night, so
Well,
I've
so
been chased out.
this is
and
the
hidden.
consummate response, and this is the law, and when the Coastal Commission is doing the appropriate time, place, and manner analyses of any restriction like that, they ask, is this restriction narrowly tailored to zero in on and eliminate the unwanted, illegal criminal activity? And you're right, a lot of fishing occurs at night. That is not inherently criminal activity. There should never be a permit granted to close a beach where someone wants to go fishing. And so what you find when you do the background research on a lot of this stuff is local neighbors of these beaches go to the local city council, the good old boys, and they say, we got a problem with kids out there partying and they're peeing all over the beach and we're tired of it, and they do bonfires and the smoke comes to
all
our
that
house.
happens.
It's this is a
Here's the
laundry
check for
list
re-election.
of well established excuses. And the city council goes, I live in a town like this, Half Moon Bay, where they'll outlaw anything if a neighbor complains. And so they'll pass these laws, but they don't have a coastal permit, and so it's technically unpermitted development. So you could theoretically, you or anybody could sue to stop it, or you can just call the Coastal Commission's Enforcement Division and say, hey, I fish out here. Is there a permit for this closure? And in all likelihood, there hasn't been any permit and there hasn't been any time, place, and manner evaluations, because what happens is the minute you begin to say, okay, what exactly is it, right? Like for years over at Sunny Cove, it used to be out of control with all the kids partying and everything. And it was really just that the sheriff had no resources to poke around there once in a while. And the former supervisor, John Leopold, he really took that on as an issue and just, got the sheriff to look more carefully, and they were able to, I don't know what's happening out there last Friday, but it seemed like they were able to really resolve a lot of that stuff without doing dramatic action and closing the beaches. But most times neighbors will go to the most self-serving closure and extinguishing all use for their own benefit, whether it's parking or beach access, whatever it is, because that benefits them the most. And like I said, in Half Moon Bay, the city was going to gate all the roads down to the beach on the south side of town, at Redondo and places around the Ritz-Carlton and the other, the luxury resort out there, because the neighbors in Ocean Colony didn't like kids going out there at night. And so they approved like gating the roads. There wasn't even a turnaround. Like the kids would have just been backing up, right? And so I went to the Coastal Commission and said, there's been no analysis of this. All they're trying to do is help the neighbors close the beach at night. And the city withdrew the application once they realized that it wasn't going to go anywhere. So you got to always be on the lookout for stuff like that. And I have heard instances where there are gates for nighttime closures, fishermen go to the city and demand a key, and the city will have you sign up. And they'll give you a key, and then you guys can go out.
I was going to say, that sounds like a great opportunity to sell a permit.
I get off of work late, right? So I'm getting off at midnight, and it's like that's my time to go. And
what's your answer when someone comes down and hassles you?
Usually, I fish enough that I'll make friends with the security guard at some point, and I say, just watch my car type of thing, and then we become friendly. But, they're shining their lights, and we're hiding in the dunes or up the coast in spots we won't talk about.
Oftentimes parking was where they're...
Yeah, parking is usually, but these areas
because the law enforcement doesn't have enough time to go scour the beach, so they're looking at the parking lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
We talk about the dredging at Half Moon Bay, and
we're super excited up there after 10 years.
Should we be doing something about the harbor here in Santa Cruz? Because you had a boat that sank in there.
Well, the harbor in Santa Cruz has its own
issues,
set of issues, and one of which is that the sand is not all that great of quality. If you've ever smelled that stuff after they do dredging here.
Well, yeah, right, that's a big issue.
But
right?
in Half Moon Bay, we have 9 creeks that dredge into Philliport Harbor. These guys, Brian Overfeld at the old Princeton Landing, and the surfers out there, they worked with the Harbor Commission for over 10 years to get all of the permits, and just recently we've accomplished everything, and the project is underway. They're dumping over 100,000 cubic yards over the harbor and down coast in Miramar and that area right now. The famous little Surfers Beach there along Highway 1 that kids and everybody loves. Is going to be the big beneficiary. We're just hoping now for these swells to help those sandbars set up. And
what's the quality of the sand there?
Really high quality.
Okay.
It's really good. And there was a lot of testing. There's a lot of mitigation. Harbor spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on eelgrass mitigation and stuff. The problem that they ran into, like Santa Cruz and some of the other harbors have been dredging for decades, so they are sort of more experienced with the permitting. But Half Moon Bay harbor area is so big, and it was filling in for so many decades, that the scope of the project is much bigger. This 100,000 cubic yards is just phase 1 experimental pilot project. There's like 11 million cubic yards of sand. Yeah. You could almost walk across the outer harbor, and that's why eelgrass started growing in there. Wow. And talk about an unfortunate story. Eelgrass doesn't naturally grow in Half Moon Bay. It grows in shallow coastal areas, but when the harbor filled up with sand, eelgrass started growing. Probably came in from a boat coming from San Diego or something, and then that's a protected species. So now out by Mavericks in the outer harbor area on the west side of the harbor. They're having to do a whole eelgrass mitigation beds out there.
No.
But it's not
Yeah.
natural, right? So
It's not natural, but it's the mitigation. The Coastal Commission doesn't care if an endangered species shows up on your property is then environmentally sensitive habitat. And so, their view of it is that ESHA is dynamic, and what is not endangered one day might be endangered the next. So, like, for example, you've got all these otters out here now, right?
Yeah.
20 years ago, there were no otters, but
Yeah.
otters are protected.
Yeah.
Everything's protected out there now.
So-
is now with that dredging in the harbor, it seems like it's an opportunity for the harbor to create a mooring. I mean, my initial
it's-
thought is that put a bunch of mooring balls out there, create some income.
I'm not sure that the district, Half Moon Bay Harbor, the Princeton Harbor Commission is really an interesting organization. They have really turned it around from the old days. It's primarily commercial fishing there, which makes it really rare among the remaining harbors in California. And so they try to do things to keep costs low. Like, for example, there's trails all over the place out there. All the parking is free.
Yeah.
They need to do more things like you see happening in Dana Point and these bigger harbors. They're doing like movie nights now, but they need more restaurants and things to bring the community in order to sustain all the benefits that they're providing.
Selling off the boat's good because that's
It's
that's a huge
fantastic.
thing
I mean,
out
in
there.
crab season
Yeah.
and stuff, the crab fishermen do so well because you can buy the crab live off the boats for less than you'd pay it in Whole Foods, but the fishermen are making more.
Twice as much.
So it's
Yeah.
really cool.
It's a huge benefit for them, and they're starting to do that more here in Santa Cruz
Mark,
too.
when you were at law school, did you realize this is the direction you were going to take, or did something grab hold of you at that time and say,
No, I got lucky. Like I said earlier, growing up in Santa Barbara with all the environmental activism and the oil spill and everything there, I pretty much knew what I wanted to do by the time I got to law school. I didn't want to do traditional law practice or big firm work. And so my professors at USF, because I signed up at USF because it was close to Ocean Beach,
Right.
and I had heard, oh my God, the surf there is just off the hook. And so then my professors found it really quirky and interesting that there was like a surfer in law school. And so they really encouraged me to consider what we would call surf law and laws, and this particularly a coastal act that surround beaches. And I would scratch my head and go, well, that's not a thing. How do you do that? And they're all like, you can do anything as a lawyer. You just got to specialize and know what you're doing and be good at it. And so right at that time was when Surfrider was being founded. And so I immediately fell in with Tom Pratt, and we started looking at the Humboldt stuff and the pulp mills and the paper toxicity from the paper making up there. And never looked back. We just went crazy.
TC, you better give him the question we always
Well,
ask
I
this
will,
season.
but in regards to that Humboldt thing, I thought I read something that there was like 20,000 violations. Is that the number?
40.
40,000 violations.
40,000 violations of the Clean Water Act in federal court in San Francisco. These guys, this was black toxic effluent with dioxin and all kinds of shit in there. And every fish and stuff they would test with these things, would show all kinds of chronic and long-term impacts. And so we managed to win that case, and it was like, the fines were many millions, and it was really $100 million settlement. And the surfers up there were always adamant that they didn't want to put these pulp mills out of business. They just wanted to clean surfing there at the North Jetty.
Right.
And we pretty much accomplished that, but then years later the pulp mills went out of business anyways. There just wasn't the redwood trees sufficient to run them anymore.
I surfed in Humboldt when I was young, and it smelled.
Yeah.
It was
Like
bad.
there was,
It was
like
really bad.
we were talking North Jetty, like it smelled.
Yeah.
The water and the air, like it was gross. And so that, to me, that's such a gigantic accomplishment, and pretty much kind of right out of the gates.
We got, we really got lucky with that case. It put Surfrider on the map, and that was really helpful for all the other stuff worldwide that we and then they went on to do. And that, within a few years thereafter, I went to Sierra Club and had the privilege of doing their coastal work for 18 years, and that was amazing because they had more significant resources, history, and culture. And we just made an enormous impact on the Coastal Act and the Coastal Commission policy work and the history of coastal protection in California.
What did I say in the beginning of the show tonight?
What's that? Oh, yeah.
About the protector of the coast.
The protector, that's
TC,
right.
can I get two more quickies?
Yes,
in there?
absolutely.
One is the sand plant in Marina. I don't know if you were involved with that.
It's gone.
Right. Was there a pollutant that came from them, or was it just
No,
that
but
mining
they
the
were
sand?
they were able to show that they were taking the equivalent of like all the sand in Monterey County annually out of
Okay.
there for what was like a century.
It was a huge bucket.
Yeah.
I saw Pat Quigley get washed in that bucket because they just there was a giant
Yeah,
bucket
no,
just
they
dragged
brought
at the
a
beach.
pond.
Yeah,
They
in the
filled
pond,
the pond and
Yeah.
then dredged the
Yeah.
pond,
Yeah.
and you saw them get washed in there. Wow.
And the other question I had was the newer story about the protection of the kelp beds in Pleasant
All that
Point.
land around the plant has been conserved as well.
Okay, because locally I know in Pleasure Point they were talking about closing certain areas to use water
For
use.
fishing, is that what you're talking about?
I guess
What?
mostly for fishing. The kelp beds, they were talking about the destruction
Oh,
of the kelp
well,
beds.
there's lots of no-take stuff going on in
There's
California.
a gal made a movie about it. She's coming on the show in a couple of weeks.
Okay.
Yeah.
Didn't know if you were
Yeah.
involved with that.
Well, I mean, as an abalone diver, I'm not happy with what happened up north. The abalone are obviously under a lot of stress, but I thought that sometimes we go too far on our zeal for protecting fish, and then we actually, they devastated the abalone fishery because they concentrated everyone diving in the same places and just wiped them out. When in the old days you were rewarded for swimming and hiking further, and some of them have worked really well, like the lingcod population and rockfish are really responding well to certain, strategic no-take zones, and they're seeding and populating all the surrounding areas. So some of this stuff is really successful. I just, we get caught up in this this thing where we say to the fishermen, don't worry, these closures don't have to be forever because these populations can rebound quickly. Their lifespan's a lot less than ours, right? So, and that's what we've experienced with like lingcod and stuff. I mean, they're coming back fast.
Right.
And all you have to do is go up to Oregon and fish some of their rock reefs, and you see the lings are big.
Sure,
They'll get
sure.
big if you don't fish them all out. And so, what scares me is like, a lot of the folks in the environmental groups, they say like, oh, these are the national parks of the sea. And then the fishermen are all like, hey, wait a second, that wasn't the deal.
Yeah, especially for guys fishing from the beach. How many are you going to catch and your reach is tiny and you don't have electronics and you don't have nets and I don't know.
I don't see why.
Well, the problem as a fisherman is you cut out rock fishing, it puts all the pressure on the halibut.
Sure.
And then it's just a matter of time before
Yeah.
the halibut are going to, then we're going to.
Well, they stop salmon,
Well,
so then
well,
everyone's
that's
fishing
what
for
I'm saying,
stripers.
and-
It's like you notice they go from one species to another, and then they crush those, and then they go back to the other one.
And then it's also not great when the federal government's is doing the opposite. And so that's kind of tough too when they want to drain the rivers.
My big bitch is
Well,
just
yeah,
the
it's
big
water standards.
boats. Like with the crab, if we just limited Dungeness crab to the local guys in these small harbors, we'd have crab like 6, 7, 8 months a year.
Yeah.
And instead, you get these giant boats coming down from Washington and Oregon with like, I don't know how these guys accumulate dozens and hundreds of permits. And then everything's fished out by Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
And they're not nice.
And squid boats, too.
Because as a recreational fisher, we set our gear first. They come the next week, our gear disappears.
Yeah, that happens to everybody.
Yeah.
The other thing that I worry about now is we're on this jag where if anybody sees a whale anywhere in the ocean, we don't open the crab fishery. I'm all like, what? And then they're all like, don't worry, you can use a GPS trap. And I'm all like, Who's going to be able to afford like $4,000 for a GPS trap? It won't even pay for itself in your lifetime.
And we fish deep. You know, it's one thing with a lot of lobster
You will
stuff. that's
never
shallower.
find those things.
Yeah.
I mean, that seems like mission impossible to me.
Is it time for our seasoned veteran
Absolutely.
question?
Let's
Yeah,
be
two-part
practical.
question.
Okay, so we ask all of our seasoned guests, and we're just gonna.
Do I get a special jacket?
We're gonna loop you into that class. Our seasoned guests. The first one is, we've added this one recently, and I like it. Your favorite day surfing and why?
Oh, that would have to be the last time I went out on the Central Coast, the big famous Point Break, and had a great time on the South Swell.
Love it.
2 weeks, not even 10 days ago. I guess there was a little shitty surf in between, but even that was fun too.
And that's kind of an answer we get a lot.
Yeah.
You know, as people will say,
But
like,
I
"Who's the
think
last
also-
time I went surfing?"
I also think, what was your favorite decade?
That's the second question.
Oh God, you know, those decades at Ocean Beach before the internet were something special. I mean, when I showed up there in the 80s, there were only a couple.
Where'd you come
hundred
from? Where did you
surfers.
come from? To
So I grew up in Santa Barbara, and I
Okay.
went to UC San Diego
Right.
and did the whole Blacks Beach thing, and really fell in love with La Jolla when I was there in the 70s, and then showed up at Ocean Beach and was just all like, "Oh my God!" And
Which wave is heavier, Blacks or Ocean Beach?
well, when Black's on its day, it'll beat the
And they're
living
both,
daylights
right?
out of
The north
I mean,
North Peak there would kick your ass.
I'm asking a seasoned veteran.
Don't think that Black's is like lazy man's wave. No way.
They're
I've been
both
punished
they're,
out
they're
there.
both a brutal
But,
way.
I mean, Ocean Beach punishes you even on a 3-foot day. It's just incredible. And so, though I would say like right up until around 2000, the early 2000s,
Yeah.
there was still nobody surfing there, and we used to, look for people to surf with and call people to go surfing, and you had to look at it, and if you drove from any distance, the East Bay or otherwise, it'd be over by the time you got there.
Yeah.
Nowadays, oh my God, the weather reporting and the internet, these kids drive from Orange County
Yeah.
all night,
Oh,
and
yeah.
it's blowing offshore
That's right.
and double overhead when they pull up, and even though they've been up all night, probably taking drugs and drinking and everything, they're still stronger than me, right? And it began to really weigh on me during the COVID, that I'd look out the window, there would be like 300 people surfing the middle of the beach at Ocean Beach. And I tell everybody in Santa Cruz, Ocean Beach is the most crowded surf spot in America. I never could have imagined that, but
Yeah.
how could you imagine the dedication that people have for surfing? It's endless. That kids
Yeah.
today are like working out like crazy
Yeah.
and dedicating themselves to that. And so I can't complain. It's just not quite so much for me. I've gravitated now, mostly living and working in Half Moon Bay and splitting time in Santa Barbara, working up in Humboldt and San Diego, and still doing a lot of stuff around here and love it.
Yeah, you love it.
It's
Yeah.
gorgeous.
Well, did we said the late 80s? Is that what it is?
I'd give it more time, maybe 95 to 2005.
Okay, that's the decade.
That's the decade. All right.
That is. Well, I like that pre-internet sort of synopsis because that definitely changed surfing. The surf cams and
Oh, the cams and
Yeah.
people knowing when.
Did
to
we
be
cover
there.
everything on the air that you wanted to?
No, it would take us another hour.
Okay.
we'll have to have you back.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, we could talk about the whole RTC rail trail in North County and Davenport, the Kotani Wilderness area being run by BLM. When they established the Stornetta BLM preserve up at Point Arena, that place was loaded with vernal pools and abalone and all kinds of stuff. And it got just desecrated immediately because there was no oversight, no trash cans, no enforcement
policing.
or anything. And I look at BLM and this whole wilderness in North County, and I'm thinking, how is it ever going to survive? We love everything to death. There's no area of the coast that's being left wild. We don't consider our public access objectives satisfied unless there's a trail and a parking lot and a restroom.
Right.
And I just, I have regret. I have such a long history of, urging everyone to maximize beach access. I was the president at Coast Walk and, of course, Sierra Club and all this stuff. But I look at this today, the way we equate recreation with conservation, and most environmentalists are all like, yeah, if I can't go hike there, then it doesn't exist for me if it's just for the animals. And that leads to like this study that came out in Santa Cruz a few weeks ago that showed that, surfing was worth the $100 million to the local economy. And I just cringe. I think, God, are we reduced to like monetizing every wave and
Every
the only
dollar.
way to save something is to like say it's really valuable because you're going to fill your tank with gas and you eat a hamburger and have a beer while you're there. To me, I worry about stuff like that.
And shop here.
Hey, listen, this place is iconic on its own. And all the kids on my street, I've got skateboards for all the kids on my street at Ocean Beach, and this is like a temple. It's like Mecca for the kids, and they love this place.
They come here and then end up at the beach.
Exactly. Well, Mark, it was awesome having you on the show.
Thanks, Mark.
Pleasure.
I will
always.
say it again, the protector of the coast. And I love how this discussion and talking to you today of how you have changed.
Oh, totally.
And that's progress, in my opinion.
You can't be afraid of change. It's just like those stupid suppers. You can't be afraid of stand-up paddling. You have to embrace it.
Oh, look at him go. He's going to do a dance. Do a little dance.
All right. That was very good.
I tease him all the time.
Thank
Okay,
you
well,
guys
Neil will be
for
sweeping out
keeping
there
up-
tomorrow, that's for
keeping up
sure.
the good work.
Next week's guest is Janelle, I think her name, Bellman. She was mayor of Sausalito, and now she's vying to be lieutenant governor of California.
That is a
Good luck to
big
her.
position,
Yeah.
and I am very excited about that show. Folks, thanks for tuning in. Mark, thank you for being here.
Anytime.
Keep
Love
up
you
the
guys.
good fight. You
The 831's in the house.
Yeah,
Don't forget about
831. The 831.
Yeah.
Look it up. That's
Substack.
live
Facebook.
right now
Substack
on
live right now.
Substack.
It's still going live. Yeah.
We're live right now on
Fantastic.
Substack.
Yep.
Looking forward to the great future of the 831.
Thank
Cheers.
We'll see you guys
Cheers.
next week on the Off the Lip Radio Show. Mark, again, thank you. Lee, great having you here.
Yeah, appreciate
the
it.
legend, Lee Solomon. We will see you next week on the Off the Lip Radio Show. Good night.